When you look at the way most people approach life, business, or even their personal goals, you'll notice a common theme. They tend to think in analogies. They say, well, this is how it's always been done, or that's what the experts say is possible, and they shape their decisions within those boundaries. But that kind of thinking limits you to incremental improvements, to staying inside a box that someone else designed years before you were even born. Elon Musk has talked about this many times, and it is one of the core reasons he has been able to do things that others thought were impossible. He doesn't begin with what's been done before. He begins with first principles. First principles thinking is about boiling down reality to its fundamental truths and then reasoning up from there. It's how scientists think about physics, it's how great engineers solve problems, and it's how you can approach your own life if you want to break through limitations that feel permanent. Think about Tesla as an example. For decades, the auto industry had written off electric cars as impractical. The logic was that batteries were too expensive, too heavy, and too inefficient to compete with gasoline. Everyone accepted that as a given because everyone was reasoning by analogy, comparing new attempts to past failures. But Musk asked a different question. What are the actual materials that go into a lithium-ion battery? He broke the problem down to its raw components, things like nickel, cobalt, aluminum, lithium, and polymers, and then looked at the commodity market prices. What he found was that if you stripped away the middlemen, the assumptions, and the outdated processes, the fundamental cost of materials was nowhere near as high as people claimed. The problem wasn't physics. It was the way people were thinking about the problem. By going to first principles, he realized the barrier was artificial. That insight gave birth to Tesla, as we know it today, a company that didn't just make electric cars viable but made them aspirational. Now, apply that same framework to your own life. Maybe you feel stuck in a job that drains you. The analogy-driven mind says, this is just how work island everyone hates their job. You can't expect more. But first principles thinking asks, what is work, really? At its core, work is the act of exchanging your time, energy, and skills for resources. If that's the fundamental truth, then why should it necessarily be miserable? Could you find or create a way to exchange your skills for resources in a way that excites you, that aligns with your values, that makes you grow? When you strip the problem down, you see opportunities that were invisible before. Or take health. Most people look at their fitness and say, I'm too old to get in shape, or I don't have the genetics, because they're reasoning by analogy. They're comparing themselves to what they've seen others fail at. But if you ask, from first principles, what does the human body actually need to function at a high level, the answers are straightforward: movement, proper fuel, rest, and stress adaptation. Those are physics-level truths about biology. From there, you can rebuild a lifestyle that works regardless of age or background. The brilliance of first principles is that it cuts through excuses and forces you to confront reality as it is, not as people have told you at Island. It demands honesty, and that's why most people avoid it, because it's easier to say, this can't be done, than to do the hard work of asking, what is actually true? Musk himself has said, I think it's important to reason from first principles rather than by analogy. You boil things down to the most fundamental truths and say, what are we sure is true? And then reason up from there. That kind of mindset is rare, but it's the source of breakthroughs. Think about SpaceX. Conventional wisdom said rockets were disposable. They cost hundreds of millions to build, and once they launched, they burned up or crashed into the ocean. That was just the way it was. Musk asked, why? Airplanes aren't disposable. You don't throw away a Boeing 747 after one flight. What if we treated rockets the same way, designed them to land, be reused, and fly again? That one shift in perspective changed the economics of space exploration forever. What most of the world called impossible, Musk's team did because they asked the fundamental question. Now extend that into your personal decisions. How many things in your life have you accepted as just the way it is without ever asking if that's really true? How many doors have you left closed because everyone around you told you they were locked, when in fact they were only stuck by outdated assumptions? First principles thinking isn't comfortable, because it exposes how many of your limitations are self-imposed. It forces you to take responsibility. But it also frees you, because once you see the fundamentals, you can design new paths no one thought of. It's the difference between being a bricklayer who stacks stones without asking what the building is for and being the architect who imagines a cathedral. Most people live their lives stacking bricks, same job, same habits, same cycles, never questioning what they're really building. First principles is the blueprint. It's the tool that lets you redesign the structure entirely. Musk often says that when you think this way, you stop being trapped by history. He calls it reasoning from physics. Physics doesn't care how something has been done before. It only cares about the laws of energy, matter, and force. Likewise, your life doesn't care about tradition, expectation, or convention. It only responds to the actions you take and the reality you design. So why not design from the ground up? The practical question is, how do you start? You don't need to be building rockets to use first principles. Start with a simple process. Step 1. Identify the problem. Step 2. Strip it down to its most basic truths. Step 3. Reason up from those truths instead of past assumptions. Say you want to start a business but think, I don't have the capital, the connections, or the experience. That's analogy-based reasoning. Strip it down. What is a business at its core? It's the act of solving a problem for someone and getting rewarded for it. That's the physics level truth. So instead of focusing on what you lack, start by asking, what problem can I solve? Then, how can I deliver that solution as simply and directly as possible? That shift alone can change your trajectory. The beauty of first principles is that it compounds. Once you start applying it, you realize you can question everything. Your finances, your routines, your relationships. Are you living on defaults handed to you by culture and family, or are you designing life based on fundamental truths? It doesn't mean you abandon tradition or advice, but it means you stop being bound by them. You take ownership. Elon Musk didn't reinvent rockets because he was smarter than every aerospace engineer. He did it because he refused to accept the assumption that rockets had to be disposable. That's the lesson. Genius isn't about IQ, it's about perspective. The willingness to question what everyone else accepts as permanent. If you want to transform your own life, start there. Ask yourself, what assumptions have I accepted without proof? What would happen if I stripped them away and rebuilt from scratch? That's the spark of every major breakthrough. And that's why first principles thinking isn't just a tool for billionaires. It's a mindset for anyone who refuses to live on autopilot. Once you start reasoning from fundamentals, you stop being trapped by history and start building the future. When people hear the word risk, their minds immediately jump to danger, to loss, to the possibility of embarrassment or financial ruin, but what they rarely realize is that the bigger risk, the one that quietly destroys most lives, is playing it safe. Look around you. Most people take the so-called safe path. They pick the stable job, follow the predictable routine, live inside the boundaries of what society says is reasonable, and then decades later, they look back with regret, wondering where the time went and why they feel unfulfilled. Elon Musk has often said that failure is not just an option, it is a requirement, because if you are not failing, you are not innovating, you are not pushing the boundaries of what's possible. Think about SpaceX in its early years. The company had 3 rocket launches in a row that failed spectacularly. Each failure cost millions of dollars and brought the company to the edge of collapse. Most people would have quit. The safe move would have been to shut down operations, salvage what was left, and walk away with excuses. But Musk doubled down. He knew that risk was not the enemy, stagnation was. On the 4th attempt, Falcon 1 finally reached orbit, and that single success changed the trajectory of the company forever. If they had played it safe, there would be no SpaceX today, no reusable rockets, no vision of colonizing Mars. The lesson is clear. The willingness to face failure head on is what opens the door to transformative success. Now let's apply this principle to your life. How often do you avoid risk under the illusion of safety? You stay in a job you dislike because it pays the bills. You avoid starting that business or pursuing that passion because you might fail. You refuse to have the difficult conversation in your relationship because it could cause conflict. In every case, the decision to play it safe seems logical in the moment, but the long-term consequence is decay. You don't just avoid failure, you avoid growth. Over time, the accumulation of safe choices builds a life that is small, predictable, and uninspired. You don't notice it right away because comfort disguises itself as security, but eventually the weight of unrealized potential becomes unbearable. Musk often says, if something is important enough, you should try, even if the probable outcome is failure. That mindset reframes risk entirely. The real danger isn't in failing. The real danger is in failing to try. Think about it in terms of opportunity cost. Every safe choice you make comes with a hidden price tag, the opportunities you never pursued, the skills you never developed, the impact you never made. Playing it safe is not neutral. It is actively costing you your future. People often admire risk takers as if they are wired differently, as if they are born fearless, but the truth is they feel fear like everyone else. The difference is they calculate risk through the lens of first principles. They ask, what is the worst that can realistically happen if I try this, and what is the cost if I don't? Most of the time, the worst case scenario is survivable. A failed project, a lost investment, some embarrassment. But the cost of inaction, of not even attempting, is far more devastating because it guarantees stagnation. Musk put his entire fortune from PayPal into Tesla and SpaceX at a time when both companies were on the brink of collapse. He could have kept the money, lived comfortably, retired early, and played it safe, but he knew that safety was an illusion. The only way to build something truly meaningful was to risk everything on what he believed mattered. That's the essence of courage, not the absence of fear, but the decision that something else is more important. The irony is that risk and failure, when embraced, actually increase resilience. Every failure teaches you something, every setback strengthens your capacity to adapt, and every risk sharpens your ability to see opportunities others overlook. Playing it safe, on the other hand, weakens you. It makes you more fragile, more dependent on systems you don't control, more afraid of change. Safety becomes a prison, not a shield. So ask yourself honestly, where in your life are you hiding behind safety? Is it in your career, where you avoid pursuing your true calling because you're afraid of instability? Is it in your health, where you avoid pushing your body because you fear discomfort? Is it in your relationships, where you avoid honesty because you fear rejection? In each case, the comfort you cling to is the very thing keeping you from growth. The truth is that the future belongs to those willing to risk discomfort today for the chance at transformation tomorrow. Musk has faced ridicule, doubt, and financial ruin more times than most of us can imagine, but he keeps moving forward because he understands that failure is feedback, not finality. Each risk he took, each failure he endured, became fuel for greater innovation. Without those failures, there would be no Tesla reshaping the auto industry, no SpaceX redefining space exploration, no Neuralink pushing the boundaries of human potential. Failure isn't the opposite of success, it is the process of success. The same applies to you. Every risk you avoid is a future lesson you never learn, a future growth you never achieve. Playing it safe feels secure in the short term, but it guarantees regret in the long term. When you understand this, you begin to see failure not as something to fear, but as a necessary companion on the road to achievement. It becomes less about avoiding risk and more about choosing the right risks, the ones aligned with your vision and values. And here's the most liberating part. Once you redefine failure as progress, the fear of taking risks shrinks. You stop asking, what if I fail? And start asking, what if I succeed? What if I don't even try? That shift alone can change your entire trajectory. Musk often uses the analogy of rockets to explain risk. A rocket launch has thousands of points of potential failure, but you don't scrap the mission because of that. You test, you iterate, you learn, and you launch again. That's how life works too. Every attempt carries risk, but each attempt also carries knowledge. And over time, that compounding knowledge increases your odds of success dramatically. Playing it safe means never launching, which guarantees you never leave the ground. Ultimately, the cost of playing it safe is not comfort, it is potential wasted. The world doesn't advance because people stayed comfortable. It advances because people risked failure to pursue what mattered. Musk once said, some people don't like change, but you need to embrace change if the alternative is disaster. Playing it safe may feel like avoiding disaster, but in reality, it is choosing a slow-motion disaster, the erosion of your dreams, the decay of your courage, the death of your potential. Risk, when approached with clarity and vision, is not reckless. It is the price of growth. So the next time you face a decision and feel fear whispering that it's safer to wait, remember this. Waiting is not safety. Waiting is decay. The choice is never between risk and safety. It's between risk and regret. The question is, which one will you choose? When most people face a problem, they don't actually solve it. They just copy what's already been done, adding a small tweak here or there, hoping that incremental change will be enough to create progress. But real breakthroughs don't come from iteration alone. They come from stripping problems down to their most fundamental truths and then reasoning up from there. a process called first principles thinking. Elon Musk didn't revolutionize space travel or electric cars by accepting conventional wisdom. He dismantled the assumptions baked into those industries, questioned every cost, every design choice, every so-called law of physics that was really just a habit of thinking, and by doing so he unlocked possibilities others couldn't see. Consider Tesla. Before Musk, the auto industry largely dismissed electric vehicles as impractical toys because batteries were too expensive, too heavy, and too weak. The common assumption was that battery cost was fixed, that it couldn't drop below a certain price per kilowatt hour, so electric cars would always be too costly to compete with gas-powered vehicles. Instead of accepting that, Musk broke down the problem to its atomic level. What is a battery? It's just a collection of materials: nickel, cobalt, aluminum, lithium, graphite. He asked, what are the raw material costs on the global market? Could those materials be combined differently, manufactured more efficiently, produced at scale in new ways? By reasoning from first principles instead of industry assumptions, he saw that batteries didn't have to be as expensive as everyone thought, and that insight gave Tesla the confidence to invest in gigafactories and scale production when competitors were still laughing. The same approach applied to SpaceX. When Musk asked why rockets were so expensive, the aerospace industry explained it was just the way things were. Rockets cost hundreds of millions, and every launch meant building a new one from scratch. Musk refused to accept that. He broke the rocket down into parts: aluminum alloys, carbon fiber, titanium, electronics, engines, and asked, what's the actual commodity cost of these raw materials? He found that the materials accounted for only a small fraction of the final rocket price. The rest was markup, inefficiency, outdated manufacturing processes, and the fact that rockets weren't reused. That realization sparked the idea of reusable rockets, a concept the industry dismissed as impossible. Yet today SpaceX routinely lands and reuses rockets, cutting costs dramatically and reshaping the economics of space. This is the power of first principles thinking. It breaks the illusion that the way things have always been is the way they must always be. Now, let's bring this down from rockets and cars to your own life. Most people live by analogy, not by principles. They choose careers because that's what others around them do. They manage money the way their parents did. They approach health based on whatever diet is trending. They don't stop to ask, what are the actual truths here? What do I know for certain? What am I assuming just because others are? Imagine you want to change your financial situation. The common assumption is that you need to earn more to save more, but first principles thinking asks, is income the only variable, or can expenses, investment strategies, and compounding play a bigger role? Maybe you discover that even modest savings invested consistently over time can outpace a higher salary that's squandered on lifestyle inflation. Or think about health. People often assume fitness requires hours in the gym or expensive equipment. First principle says, the human body thrives on movement, strength, nutrition, and rest. Walking, bodyweight exercises, and basic whole foods can produce extraordinary results if applied consistently. Suddenly, the excuse of not having time or money collapses. First principles thinking is essentially intellectual courage, the willingness to question deeply, to be ridiculed for not accepting what everyone else assumes, and to endure the discomfort of building new solutions from scratch. It's not easy, because it forces you to confront uncertainty without the crutch of tradition. But it's also liberating, because once you strip a problem down to truths, you see opportunities hidden from everyone else. Musk has said that reasoning by analogy is like building with borrowed blueprints. You're constrained by someone else's design. Reasoning from first principles is like designing from physics itself. In your life, you can apply the same method by asking 3 questions whenever you face a challenge. What do I absolutely know to be true about this situation? What am I assuming because that's what others believe? If I rebuilt this solution from scratch, what would it look like? These questions cut through noise and reveal leverage points others miss. The reason most people don't think this way is because it feels hard. Analogy is easy, tradition is comfortable, first principles is demanding. But that's why it's so powerful. Few are willing to do it, which means those who are gain an enormous advantage. Think about how many opportunities lie hidden because of assumptions people never bother to test. For centuries, humans assumed heavier than air flight was impossible, until the Wright brothers stripped the problem down to lift, drag, thrust, and weight, and built a solution from principles. For decades, People assumed personal computing was too costly and complicated for ordinary households, until Jobs and Wozniak stripped it down to components and designed machines anyone could use. For years, reusable rockets were science fiction, until SpaceX proved otherwise. The pattern is the same. Breakthroughs happen when someone questions assumptions everyone else accepts. Now, imagine if you treated your own challenges this way. What if you stopped accepting that your limits are fixed, that your circumstances are permanent, that your abilities are capped? What if you asked, what do I really know about what's possible for me? Chances are, you'd realize most of your limits are assumptions, not truths. You don't know you can't start that business, you've just assumed it because others like you didn't. You don't know you can't transform your health, you've just assumed it because it hasn't happened yet. You don't know you can't learn a new skill or shift careers, you've just assumed it because people around you haven't tried. First principles thinking doesn't guarantee success, but it guarantees clarity. And clarity is the foundation of every breakthrough. Musk once said, boil things down to the most fundamental truths and reason up from there. That's the blueprint for progress, whether you're building rockets or building your life. The future doesn't belong to those who copy. It belongs to those who question, those who strip away assumptions, those who dare to think differently. And here's the part most people miss. You don't need to be Elon Musk to use first principles thinking. You don't need billions of dollars or teams of engineers. You just need the courage to ask better questions, the patience to test answers, and the discipline to act on what you discover. If you do that consistently, you will see opportunities others can't, build solutions others won't, and achieve outcomes others think impossible. That's not just innovation, that's transformation. When people imagine success, they usually picture a straight line from vision to achievement, as if great outcomes are the natural result of hard work and intelligence applied in a consistent direction. But the truth is far messier, because progress never unfolds in a neat upward curve. It comes in cycles of trial, failure, adjustment, and renewal. And the single most important trait that separates those who endure from those who fade is resilience. Resilience isn't just the ability to survive setbacks. It's the ability to harness them, to convert adversity into fuel that strengthens rather than weakens you. Elon Musk didn't build Tesla or SpaceX by gliding through an easy series of victories. Tesla came within weeks of bankruptcy. SpaceX had 3 rocket explosions in a row before its first successful orbital launch. The Solar City merger was ridiculed. Critics predicted collapse at every turn. Yet resilience kept him in the game long enough for the improbable to become inevitable. What most people don't realize is that resilience isn't about being fearless or never doubting yourself. It's about persistence when fear and doubt are screaming at you to quit. It's about choosing to continue even when your brain gives you 1,000 logical reasons to stop. Musk has often said he thought Tesla and SpaceX were more likely to fail than succeed, but he kept going anyway, because the mission was worth the risk. That's resilience, not blind optimism, but determined endurance. Think about your own life. How many times have you stopped at the first sign of difficulty? How many projects, dreams, or relationships have you abandoned because the resistance felt too strong? Most people don't fail because they lack intelligence or opportunity. They fail because they lack the endurance to keep going when results don't show up quickly. We live in a culture addicted to immediacy. We expect progress to come fast and obvious. But the reality is that transformation is delayed gratification in its purest form. It's doing the work today without seeing the results until years later. And the bridge between today's effort and tomorrow's reward is resilience. The pattern is universal. Start anything meaningful, and you'll face resistance. Launch a business, you'll encounter financial stress, customer rejection, and technical breakdowns. Commit to improving your health, you'll fight cravings, injuries, and plateaus. Try to change your mindset. You'll battle old habits, doubts, and the skepticism of those around you. Resistance is the price of entry for anything worthwhile. Without resilience, resistance wins. With resilience, resistance becomes the training ground for greatness. Imagine you're lifting weights. The muscle doesn't grow because the weight is light. It grows because the weight is heavy, because the resistance tears down fibers that rebuild stronger. Life works the same way. Resilience transforms obstacles into the weight that strengthens you. But here's the mistake most people make. They assume resilience is a trait you either have or don't have. In reality, resilience is a skill. It's trained, built, and strengthened through exposure, just like a muscle. The more you face difficulty and continue anyway, the more resilient you become. The less you expose yourself to challenge, the more fragile you stay. That's why Musk deliberately takes on problems that look impossible. They train resilience at a level ordinary challenges never could. By putting himself in situations where failure was almost guaranteed, he built the capacity to endure failure without breaking. And over time, that capacity became his greatest asset. Think of it this way. Resilience compounds just like money. The first time you recover from a small setback, it's painful and awkward, but you learn that survival is possible. The second time, it hurts less. By the 10th or 20th time, you've built a foundation of confidence that no single obstacle can destroy. You begin to expect resistance, and instead of panicking, you adapt. That compounding effect means that resilience today prepares you for storms tomorrow. If you want to build something great, you need to accept that resilience isn't optional, it's the price of admission. The question then becomes, how do you build it? First, you must redefine failure. Most people treat failure as a verdict, a signal that they aren't good enough or that the dream is impossible. Resilient people treat failure as feedback, as data, as part of the process. Musk has said that failure is an option at SpaceX because if you're not failing, you're not innovating enough. That doesn't mean failure is celebrated, but it is expected and mined for lessons. Apply that to your own life. When something doesn't work, don't collapse into shame. Ask, what can this teach me? What adjustment does this demand? Failure only destroys you if you stop learning from it. Second, you must commit to mission over mood. Resilience doesn't come from feeling good every day. It comes from staying committed to a larger purpose even when your mood is low. Musk didn't push through near bankruptcy at Tesla because he was feeling motivated. He did it because the mission accelerating the world's transition to sustainable energy was more important than his feelings. If you anchor your actions to mission instead of mood, you'll find the strength to keep going even when you don't feel like it. Third, you must build recovery into the system. Resilience isn't about grinding yourself into the ground. A burnt-out person is not resilient. Recovery is part of resilience. Musk is notorious for long hours, but even he has admitted the toll it takes and the importance of rest, delegation, and balance. In your life, resilience means knowing when to push and when to recharge. Sleep, exercise, reflection, and relationships aren't luxuries, they're fuel. Without them, endurance collapses. Fourth, you must normalize adversity. Stop acting surprised when life gets hard. Expect it. Plan for it. Resilient people don't interpret adversity as unfair, they see it as normal. If you expect difficulty, you won't be blindsided when it arrives. Instead, you'll meet it with the mindset, of course this is happening, and of course I'll move through it. That expectation shifts the experience from crisis to challenge, from unbearable to survivable. Finally, you must remember that resilience isn't just about you. It multiplies when it's shared. Musk often talks about the importance of building teams who believe in the mission because shared resilience is more powerful than individual resilience. When one person falters, another lifts them up. When doubt spreads, belief reinforces it. In your life, surrounding yourself with resilient people creates an environment where endurance becomes natural. Alone, you might quit. Together, you persist. So think about resilience as both an inner engine and an outer network. Build both, and you become nearly unstoppable. The future belongs to those who can endure what others cannot. Intelligence matters, vision matters. But without resilience, both collapse under the weight of reality. With resilience, even modest intelligence and vision can create extraordinary results because you'll keep going long enough to turn small wins into massive outcomes. When Musk says the probability of success was low, but he kept going anyway, he's describing the essence of resilience. And the good news is you can build the same trait. Every time you push forward when you want to quit, every time you rise after a setback, every time you choose mission over mood, you are training resilience. And over years, that training compounds into a force more powerful than talent or luck. Resilience doesn't guarantee success, but without it, success is impossible. With it, success becomes not just possible but probable, because time eventually rewards those who refuse to give up. Most people think of innovation as a stroke of genius, a flash of insight that strikes in the middle of the night, or a bolt of lightning that separates visionaries from everyone else. But the truth is far less glamorous and far more practical, because real innovation is the disciplined process of refusing to accept the world as it is and insisting on building the world as it could be. Elon Musk didn't revolutionize the auto industry, the aerospace industry, or the energy industry by waiting for inspiration to strike. He innovated by asking first principles questions, by breaking assumptions down to their atomic truths, and by putting in the relentless work to turn those truths into systems that could scale. That's the real secret. Innovation is not an event, it's a mindset, a way of seeing the world where every problem is an equation waiting to be solved, every barrier is a design flaw waiting to be corrected, and every impossible is just an invitation to think deeper. Consider Tesla. Before Musk, electric cars were slow, unattractive, and dismissed as toys for environmentalists. The assumption was that no one wanted them, that battery capacity would never make them practical, that charging networks would never be built. Most people accepted those assumptions as facts. Musk asked instead, what is actually true? Are batteries truly incapable of scaling, or has no one invested in scaling them? Do people really hate electric cars, or do they just hate bad electric cars? What if you could build one that was fast, sleek, and desirable? What if you could build the charging infrastructure alongside the cars themselves? By challenging assumptions at the root level, Tesla didn't just make electric cars viable, it made them inevitable, and now the entire auto industry is racing to catch up. That's innovation not waiting for the future to happen, but engineering it into existence. The same pattern applies to SpaceX. The space industry was stagnant, weighed down by bureaucracy, bloated costs, and the assumption that rockets had to be disposable. For decades, governments and corporations launched billion-dollar rockets that burned up after a single use. Musk asked, why? Airplanes don't get thrown away after one flight, so why should rockets? What if rockets could be reused like airplanes? What if launch costs could be reduced by a factor of 10 or even 100? The experts laughed. They said it was impossible, and for years the failures seemed to prove them right. But failure after failure, launch after explosion, SpaceX kept iterating until one day a rocket didn't just reach orbit, it landed itself back on Earth. That moment changed the trajectory of space exploration forever, because suddenly what was once impossible became obvious, and the industry had to follow. That's the nature of innovation. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. The barrier that looked unbreakable dissolves, and progress accelerates. In your own life, innovation doesn't require building rockets or cars. It requires asking better questions. Most people live trapped inside the assumptions of their culture. They believe things like, I'm not good at math, or success is for other people, or this is just how the system works. They never pause to ask, is that really true? Or is it just a hand-me-down belief from someone else? Innovation in your personal life begins the moment you stop accepting default answers and start engineering your own. Think about your work. Are you repeating patterns because that's how it's always been done, or are you looking for the inefficiencies, the blind spots, the opportunities to design something better? Think about your health. Are you following habits because they're convenient, or are you willing to experiment with routines that could extend your energy and longevity? Think about your relationships. Are you settling for shallow connections, or are you willing to reimagine what true intimacy and partnership could look like? Innovation is simply the courage to treat every part of life as a prototype. But here's the catch. Innovation isn't just about creativity, it's about execution. Ideas are abundant, but execution is rare. Musk once said that ideas are easy, but it's the 99% of hard work designing, testing, failing, refining that turns them into reality. Everyone has ideas. Very few are willing to build them, break them, rebuild them, and endure the ridicule until they work. That's why the world is full of dreamers but short on innovators. Dreamers fantasize, innovators prototype. Dreamers wait, innovators act. Dreamers hope someone else will figure it out. Innovators take responsibility and figure it out themselves. If you want to live with the spirit of innovation, you need to adopt the discipline of iteration. Stop waiting for the perfect plan. Start building, start testing, start learning. Expect it to fail. Expect to adjust. That cycle of trial and error isn't a detour, it's the path. Every innovation in history, from electricity to airplanes to the internet, was the product of endless iterations. And here's the secret most people overlook. Failure is the data that makes innovation possible. Without failure, you're just guessing. With failure, you're learning. Innovation thrives on failure, but only if you mine it for insight. Another key to innovation is embracing constraints. Most people think innovation requires unlimited resources, but the opposite is true. Constraints force creativity. SpaceX had a fraction of NASA's budget, which meant it had to design leaner, smarter systems. Tesla faced constant cash shortages, which forced it to innovate in manufacturing and supply chain efficiency. Scarcity is uncomfortable, but it's also the birthplace of breakthroughs because it forces you to strip away the unnecessary and focus on the essential. In your life, constraints are not excuses. They are invitations to innovate. Not enough money? Innovate in how you allocate it. Not enough time? Innovate in how you prioritize. Not enough knowledge? Innovate in how you learn. Constraints reveal the gap between what you think you need and what you actually need. They strip innovation down to its purest form, making the most of what you have to create what you need. Finally, innovation demands courage. Not just the courage to face external critics, but the courage to face internal doubt. Every innovator hears the same voices: this won't work, you're not ready, you don't know enough. The difference is that innovators act anyway. They recognize that waiting for certainty is the fastest way to ensure nothing changes. If you wait until the path is clear, you'll wait forever. Innovation is always a leap into the unknown, and only those willing to leap discover what's on the other side. Musk often reminds us that the odds of success were low, but he acted anyway. That's not recklessness. That's courage disciplined by purpose. And that's the choice before you. Keep living in the assumptions of others, or start innovating in the design of your own life. The future isn't something you stumble into. It's something you build, and innovation is the tool. Don't wait for someone else to create it. Don't wait for permission. Don't wait for certainty. Start building, start breaking, start reimagining. Because the truth is simple. The future belongs not to those who wait for change, but to those who innovate it into existence. When people hear the word risk, they immediately think of danger, loss, or failure, and that mindset alone explains why most people never build anything beyond average, because they miscalculate what risk really island. To them, risk means leaving a stable job, investing money, launching a business, moving to a new place, starting a relationship, or pursuing a dream, and they avoid it because they see only the possibility of losing what they already have. But here's the irony. The real risk isn't in stepping out, it's in staying where you are. Because the world is moving fast and standing still is actually falling behind. Elon Musk understood this long before most did. He risked nearly everything he had after selling PayPal, investing his fortune into Tesla and SpaceX when experts told him both companies would collapse, and he said something simple yet profound. If something is important enough, you should try, even if the probable outcome is failure. That statement reframes risk entirely because it makes you realize that the real danger isn't trying and failing, it's failing to try at all. Think about it. Failure hurts, but it teaches. Stagnation feels safe, but it rots you slowly. The truth is, every decision you make carries risk, even the choice to do nothing. Stay at a job you hate, risk wasting decades of your life, refuse to invest in your health, risk losing years of energy and vitality, avoid starting that business, risk regretting it forever. People act like avoiding risk is neutral, but it isn't. It's the most dangerous bet of all because it guarantees regret. Musk approached risk like an engineer, not a gambler. He used what he calls a probability-weighted framework, meaning he didn't just ask, what if this fails? He asked, what if this succeeds? And weighed both outcomes against each other. Most people focus entirely on the cost of failure, but ignore the cost of success not attempted. Imagine SpaceX had failed. Musk would have lost money, time, and reputation, but imagine if he hadn't tried at all. Humanity might still be stuck paying $100 million per launch, waiting for governments to move slowly, instead of envisioning Mars as a reachable frontier. That's the trade-off. The downside of risk is temporary. The upside of courage is transformational. And here's the crucial part. Risk is not recklessness. Risk is calculated exposure to uncertainty in pursuit of something meaningful. Jumping off a cliff without a parachute is reckless. Building rockets with a plan to recover and reuse them is risk. Recklessness is driven by ego. Risk is driven by purpose. Musk knew he could fail, but he also knew the mission of making humanity multiplanetary was worth betting on, even if it meant public humiliation or financial ruin. That's why his story inspires, because it reminds us that fear is not a stop sign, it's simply part of the equation. Fear is a signal that you're stepping into new territory. It doesn't mean retreat. It means pay attention, prepare, then step forward anyway. In your life, the way you define risk will determine the life you live. If risk means loss, you'll live small. If risk means possibility, you'll live big. If risk means uncertainty, you'll avoid it. If risk means opportunity disguised as uncertainty, you'll chase it. Here's the shift. Risk is not an enemy, it's a lever. When you learn how to pull it with intention, you can move your entire life forward. Every major leap in history came from someone willing to risk more than others thought reasonable. The Wright brothers risked ridicule and death to prove humans could fly. Entrepreneurs risk security to create industries. Parents risk vulnerability to raise families. Innovators risk their reputations to push ideas that the world initially mocks. That's the pattern. Risk precedes reward. But most people still think risk is about chance, when in reality it's about choice. You choose the risks you take by choosing your vision. Without vision, risks look random and terrifying. With vision, risks look like stepping stones. Musk didn't risk everything for fun. He risked because his vision demanded it. If you have no vision, every risk feels like gambling. If you have a vision, every risk feels like progress. That's why risk management is really about clarity of purpose. The clearer your why, the easier your how becomes. And here's the paradox most people never realize. The safer you try to play it, the riskier your life becomes. Play it safe financially by saving but never investing, and you risk inflation eating your savings alive. Play it safe by never speaking your mind, and you risk living unseen and unheard. Play it safe by never chasing love, and you risk a life of loneliness. Safety is an illusion. Risk is unavoidable. The only question is, will you choose risks that move you forward, or will you default to risks that keep you trapped? Musk faced ridicule, bankruptcy, and public failure, but he walked into those risks with eyes open because he knew the alternative, doing nothing, was unacceptable. That's the standard to adopt. Don't ask, what if I fail? Ask, what if I succeed? What if I don't even try? Those questions will scare you in the right direction. And once you internalize this, risk becomes less about fear and more about calibration. You stop asking, how do I avoid risk? And start asking, how do I manage it, minimize the downside, and maximize the upside? Musk minimized risk by learning relentlessly, by surrounding himself with the smartest people he could find, by testing prototypes again and again, by making failure a feedback loop instead of a dead end. That's how you should treat your own risks. Don't leap blindly, learn deeply. Don't gamble on luck. Engineer probabilities in your favor. Don't fear failure. Design systems where failure teaches. Risk, in this sense, becomes not a liability, but an asset. The person who avoids risk stagnates. The person who embraces risk grows. The person who masters risk transforms. Every risk you take either builds resilience or builds regret. The choice is yours. And here's the final truth. The biggest risk of all is to live without risking enough. One day, you'll look back. The years will have passed whether you played it safe or stepped out. You'll either say, I'm glad I did, or I wish I had. That moment is inevitable. The only variable is which sentence you'll speak. Musk decided early on he would rather risk failure and live with scars than risk regret and live with emptiness. That's the choice before you. Redefine risk not as danger but as opportunity, not as loss but as leverage, not as uncertainty but as the price of building something extraordinary. When you do, your life shifts from playing defense to playing offense, from avoiding loss to chasing possibility. That's the essence of risk as Musk lives it. Not gambling, not recklessness, but disciplined courage in service of a vision bigger than yourself.